What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. Our Green Bay Packers just defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 27-18. So, what was a two-score victory at home here in Week 6? Did it feel like a dominant win? Well, technically it was a dominating win, but why didn't it feel like it? We'll talk through the whole game here on this episode, and at the end, we'll look at the NFC as a whole, talk through who the biggest threats might be to the Packers, and so on and so forth. But let's start with the final score. Like I said, 27-18. The Packers were ahead in the game by 2 scores the majority of the game. Right closer to the end, it got a little bit close, and the Packers made a field goal to make it a 9-point game, and they never relinquished control of the game at that point. The yardage, the Packers did outgain the Bengals 409 to 268. So, again, if some of these stats I'm about to read, if you had told me prior to the game that these stats happened, I probably would have thought it was a bigger victory than it was. The Packers outgained the Bengals 409 to 268. On third down, the Bengals were 6 for 15, so about 40%-ish. The Packers were 5 out of 11. So that is a little bit down for the Packers compared to what they've been at so far this year, but still really, really good. The Packers had averaged 6.8 yards per play. The Bengals only 4.9. So again, you can see right there, Packers definitely outgained the Bengals. They were more explosive than the Bengals. The Bengals had 63 yards at halftime. So the Packers defense looked pretty damn scary early on. It reminded me a lot of the first 3 games of the season, right? If you go back and watch that first half, it was suffocating. They were rallying to the football. They were hitting. There were 5 guys there every time the ball was caught, right? When the second half came, the Bengals were finally able to move the ball, and it started out with a 17-play drive that took up almost the whole third quarter, ironically. They did waste a ton of time on that drive. Hafley's defense required them to essentially dink and dunk their way down the field. So that was definitely a frustrating drive, but that was where the Bengals started to get a little bit of momentum. So again, the final score made the game feel a lot closer than it actually was. And that's been the case many times this season for the Packers. Despite their strong start, they really haven't played a full 4 quarters of football in any game yet. So even though it felt close, this is an interesting one. Next gen stats, I believe I could have the source wrong, but the Packers never fell below the Bengals never had better than a 23% chance of winning the game at any point. So I think when the Bengals crept up to 23% chance of winning, it was when they scored that touchdown late in the fourth. So yeah, it might have felt close. I certainly felt like it was close. It never was really that close. Watching it in real time, like I said, I was insanely frustrated. I was watching the game here with my mom and my aunt at our house, and but either of you guys are listening, I hope I didn't freak you out too much, but I went a little bit nuclear in this game, and watching it, I've watched it 4 times now, and they all 22 once. It definitely wasn't as bad as it felt in real time. So again, at the end of the day, it's really, really hard to win in this league. Every game has its own unique challenges. For example, the Lions last night, right? They've looked about as good as any team in the NFL outside of against the Packers. The Chiefs absolutely walloped them last night. The same Chiefs who lost to the Chargers, who lost to the Giants, we can play this game over and over again, right? The Eagles lost to the Giants by essentially 17 points on Thursday Night Football this week, right? Anytime you can get a win in this league, you got to take it and you got to be happy about it. You don't get extra points for style points, right? Let's talk about the players of the game. I'm going to start with the kicker, Lucas Havrisik. My God. So when I found out McManus wasn't kicking in this game, I thought it was going to be a massive problem. Last year prior to signing Brandon McManus, the Packers had gone through 3 kickers. They drafted Anders Carlson in 2023, and he was a complete letdown and joke. No offense to Anders. Sure, he's a great guy, but not a great kicker. So they bring in Havrisik earlier this week. Him and Greg Joseph essentially auditioned for it. They signed him to the active roster on Friday, I believe it was. We get the message from McManus that he was going to kick in this game, so I never really thought there was any chance that this Havrisik kid was even going to kick. And then, prior to the game, I guess McManus tried to kick a few field goals. He was able to make a few of them, but he was unable to do it without some pain. So Havrisik is our kicker for this game. And naturally, I was like, here we go. Another special teams score, another problem, right? But instead, Haversick comes in. He hits all of his extra points. He makes both of his field goals, and they were good field goals, by the way. They were not near being blocked, which is good. That's progress. And they were right down the middle each time. The kick in the fourth quarter, I know it didn't feel like a high-stakes kick, but they essentially went up 2 scores with that kick. So again, that was a really clutch kick. When he lined up to kick it, I'm like, okay, just please make it. Please make it. LaFleur gave him the game ball in this one, so it's not just your guy Ian Ewing here giving him his flowers. I thought it was a really gutsy performance by him, and I was really, really impressed. I'm sure they're going to, McManus is going to be back next week. Well, maybe not. I shouldn't say that for sure. Haversick, I would hope the Packers would bring him on the practice squad and sign him. Anytime your kicker has a leg problem, even if it ends up getting better, it could always get worse. So I do think it's nice to have a guy that at least has earned our trust in the short term. Jordan Love. Yeah, he had the bad interception, and I will say it was bad on that first drive. I thought it was a impossibly stupid play. Ross Uglum from Packer Report, a few other people have said this too. Jordan has like a glitch or two every game where it's like, back in like you'd watch TV and then you'd see like the static come on the screen for a minute and then it would go back into it. Young people don't even know what we're talking about. So again, I thought Jordan played insanely well in this game. He looked outstanding. There was, what I would say 2 bad throws in this game. The pick, and then he airmailed one to Luke Musgrave in the second quarter, I believe. But he looked outstandingly good in this game. He picked up a couple of key third downs, running the ball as well. He had that insane throw to Matthew Golden up the left sideline. Guys, that throw, he couldn't have walked it up into his hands any better. It was outstanding. The Packers moved the ball all day long. They only punted once, I believe, and in the second half, they didn't punt at all. So, again, I thought Jordan was very, very good in this game. On third down this season, I'm going to throw some stats at you guys. Jordan has 14 completions of 15-plus yards, which is the most in the NFL. He has an 89.5 passing grade from PFF, which is second best in the NFL, only to, I think it's Matt Stafford. He has a 51.5% conversion rate on third down. I'll say that again, 51.5% conversion on third down. When 2023 was here and the Packers were playing out of their minds, Jordan Love included, they were at a 46%. So you can just see how insanely good he's been this year. The idea that it was one of the ESPN radio stations, you can't trust Jordan Love, and then I think there's some older guy that said that too. Anybody who thinks that is just completely ignorant. No offense. Yeah, he has 2 bad interceptions this year, but you can count on one hand how many bad throws he's even made this season. So again, I find Jordan Love to be the most underrated player on this team amongst Packer fans. He's currently tied for 4th in the NFL in MVP odds right now, and I think we're going to see that to continue to grow. I mentioned it in my bold predictions episode earlier this season that I think he's going to be in that running all season long. This was just a really, really good game from Jordan outside of those 2 throws. And you could argue that second scramble in the fourth quarter, second down scramble, he could have picked up the first down there and put the game away, but he slid a little early. I think he should have gone for the first down there, but, again, nitpicking the game. They won it. Again, that throw up to Golden on the left sideline, he could have walked it into his hands. I just thought there was a lot of phenomenal throws in this game. He was credited with 2 big-time throws in this game, which is good. That throw at the last throw he made to Golden, where he was flushed to the left, if you want to critique him too bad, he didn't have to abandon the pocket there. He is about to get smashed. He gets hit and throws a dime to Golden going up the sidelines. So again, I just felt like Jordan, I think he was the player of the game in this one. One last quick thing with Jordan. Yeah, the first pick, the interception, it was bad. It pissed me off, right? I'll throw you a few more stats here. He has a 2.7% turnover-worthy play rate. So in other words, he only puts the ball in harm's way 2.7% of the time when he drops back. So for perspective, that's better than Matt Stafford, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, and the MVP frontrunner right now, Baker Mayfield. So he's also the only quarterback in the NFL with a big-time throw rate over 6% and a turnover-worthy play percentage under 3%. So again, this ridiculous narrative that Jordan is some kind of reckless gunslinger, it's completely false, and it's in everyone's imagination. The only reason it feels like that with Jordan is because we just came off of the most turnover averse quarterback of all time in Aaron Rodgers. Okay. So if you didn't see a great game from Jordan here, you don't know what you're looking at. No disrespect. Okay. Next player of the game, Josh Jacobs. Man. So we found out after the game that Josh Jacobs had some sort of flu and he was throwing up before, during, and after the game. And he still managed to get 150 yards from scrimmage. So again, just crazy game from Josh Jacobs. He ended the game, like I said, 150 total yards, 93 rushing yards, and then 57 yards receiving. So he's really trending for a phenomenal season from a receiving standpoint. He ran super tough. He had a couple of crazy stiff arms in this game. His contact balance is just so good. He's super quick. When he catches the ball, he accelerates from 0 to 100 insanely fast, right? When you combine what happened in Dallas with this game, he's definitely getting closer to what we saw last season. Part of that is the offensive line getting better, right? And then part of it is just he's getting into a rhythm, right? He's actually pacing ahead of last year in total scrimmage yards, which is crazy. So again, it feels like Josh has had a slow start, but he's actually pacing ahead of last year. So I think he was massive in this game again. Matthew Golden, this was his breakout game. I feel like I've been predicting a breakout game for Matthew Golden for weeks now, and it finally happened. Now, did I think it was going to happen? I probably should have started him in fantasy, but I didn't because I didn't have the guts. But he ended up with 105 total yards. He did have 16 rushing yards. There were a couple of really nice plays that he made when he carried the ball. The first carry of his, quote unquote, was actually like a little bubble screen. But he got open all day long. He beat DJ Turner in the third quarter on a crossing route. Jordan just kind of let it out there a little bit too long. He had a ton of potential in this game to have an even bigger game, but again, flashed some really good speed. Run after the catch was good. He had that really nice little dig route where he came back, like 8-yard catch, turned it up and got like 18 yards or whatever. Really, really outstanding stuff, guys. That third down catch in the second quarter was, yes, it was a perfect throw from Love, but Matthew Golden beat his guy clean, got separation. That third down catch, though, to seal the game in the fourth quarter was a veteran savvy play. So he's running a deep post up to the left sideline. He was open, by the way, on that. But as soon as he saw Jordan leave the pocket, he essentially undercut his route and turned it into a crossing route instead of a post. And he essentially gave himself another 5 to 7 yards of separation and caught it, went out of bounds, and sealed the game, right? So really, really savvy play from Matthew Golden. I think he's going to only get better. Christian Watson's going to come back probably next week if I had to predict. And the things you can do with both those guys on the field, it is massively exciting. This offense is just going to get better and better and better. So I would say you can't leave this game without taking away the fact that Golden needs to get more targets. Dontavius Wicks got hurt in this game. I think it's an ankle injury. We don't know the severity of it, but regardless, Watson's going to come back. I think that Golden needs to be getting 7 to 10 targets a game, in my opinion. Now, you don't want to force it, but he deserves a lot more touches after what we saw in this game. Phenomenal game from Matthew Golden. That rolls us right into talking about the Packers offense. The top 5 graded offensive players from PFF. Matthew Golden had a 90.4 grade. By far the highest grade on offense this week, and it's also the highest of his career, obviously. Josh Jacobs was number 2 with an 83.4. He actually had a 90 receiving grade in this one, 81 run grade. So again, Josh Jacobs has never really been thought of as a guy who, has a ton of receiving ability, but he's been flashing it the last couple games. Really, really impressive. Zach Tom, his first game back, 75.5 grade, 78 pass block grade. My only concern is, and LaFleur was asked about it today, I guess Rob Demoski reported this after the game, that he was in a ton of pain after the game. I do have to wonder if maybe they sit him for a couple of games. They have to have him healthy in December and January. The next 3-4 games up until you get to Philly in, I believe, it's the end of October, I believe. Sit him till Philly. Put Darian Kennard in. Put in Anthony Belton when he gets healthy, right? We need Zach Tom to be healthy in the playoffs. If we're just going to keep playing this game where he, gets on the field for a drive or a game and then he leaves the game in more pain than when he started the game, I don't know if that's sustainable. And like I said, he needs to be ready in the playoffs. So I would probably sit him. We'll see. LaFleur said he wasn't sure if he had a setback or not, but I'm sure we'll find out as the week goes on. Number 4, Jordan Love with a 73 grade. Again, far above average. He had 2 big-time throws in this game. If it hadn't been for the interception, right, he probably would have been in the 80s here. He's still the 5th highest graded quarterback in the league from PFF this year. So again, like I said, I won't glaze over Jordan Love anymore, but another great game here. Number 5 is Romeo Doubs, 72.1. I thought he actually had a really underrated game. He was open constantly. There was a little out route that he caught, I believe it was the fourth quarter, where he had like maybe 3-4 yards of room. He like jukes him out, cuts up field, gets another 5-7 yards, right? Rome is having a really, really good season. I think they should re-sign him. If you had asked me prior to the season if they should re-sign him, I would have said no. But he just seems to always be there when Jordan needs a first down. And I think you go into next season with Dobbs, Wicks, I mean, really the same receivers they have now. But, you know, if you can go forward with Dobbs playing this way, he's only going to get better, I think. I thought, again, I'm really encouraged with what I've seen from Romeo Doubs. There's been a couple, we talked about it going into the season. He has a really good camp. He has a first good couple games, right? And then he just kind of cools off. Well, I've seen no sign of that so far. So another good game from Rome. Honorable mention in this game. Jordan Morgan started off in a rotation with Sean Ryan. Just quick side note, Sean Ryan, the right guard, he's been very bad this season. Again, I don't know what I'm looking at, but anyone who knows offensive line play has said it, that he has been pretty damn horrible this season. So going into this year, there was a lot of conversation about Jordan Morgan rotating with Sean Ryan, but because of all the injuries, they haven't really been able to have a real competition there. Well, in this game, Jordan Morgan and him rotated the first couple series, and then Jordan Morgan essentially stayed in for the whole game. So I think he might be your new right guard going forward. Now, again, we'll see what happens with Zach Tom this week. But he ended up with a 69.4 grade, and he had an over a 70 pass blocking grade. Rasheed Walker had a good game. He ended with a 68.6 grade, 80 pass blocking grade. Elton Jenkins had a 90 pass blocking grade here. So, you know, again, from a pass blocking standpoint, having all the starters back this game, it felt really, really good. So again, offensively, they ended up with 408 yards, 156 yards rushing, which is great. Again, the points weren't there in the first half, but they did leave the first half outgaining the Bengals 240-62. But they were only up 10-0. So again, did it feel like domination? It didn't, right? But it most certainly was. So again, you see it in the grades, guys. The offensive line played really, really well. They pass blocked really, really well. Like I said a little bit earlier, this is the first time since week 1 that all their preferred starters have been out there. So I have to imagine that we're only going to see better from the offensive line going forward. Jordan was only pressured on 9 of his 31 dropbacks in this game. So that's by far the best of the season, a 26% pressure grade or pressure percentage. That's really, really strong. Trey Hendrickson, yes, he left the game in the late first half, late second quarter. He did never come back, but even prior to him leaving, he didn't make much of an impact either, right? So Jordan's stats from a clean pocket, they continue to be otherworldly. I don't have them in front of me. That's okay. Just trust me when I say he's the best quarterback in the NFL right now with a clean pocket. So again, you keep him clean, he's going to completely lacerate your defense, okay? So I do think that if they can protect him the way they did in this game and the way they've done in other games this season, it's only going to get better, right? Like I mentioned earlier, Zach Tom's pain has me a bit worried. But again, it's proof of concept. This is their preferred starters for the first time since week 1. They did a great job in week 1 of pass blocking. I'm really excited about it. I think this is a lot to build on. Run blocking was better. Still not great. Nobody had a run blocking grade below 65 in this game. Nobody had one higher than 80 either. But if you look at that second Josh Jacobs touchdown, he mentioned it in the post game. He could have fallen down, done a somersault, got back up, and he still would have scored. So I really, really liked what I saw from a run blocking standpoint here. Josh Jacobs, again, 93 yards rushing. The Bengals defense has been bad, right? But they've actually been sneaky good against the run. They did a good job last week of holding the Lions running backs down. So again, you got to be pretty encouraged with that. Back to what I said earlier, Jordan was lethal in this game. I love what I saw from Rome and Matthew Golden. There were a couple of plays too where Wicks was wide open. when I watched the all 22, Wicks was wide ass open a couple times. And he's probably just like the third read. One of the plays that Jordan got hit and sacked, it was the only sack in the game. The safety Geno Stone hit him. Wicks was open on the left side of the field, and I was just like, when I watched it back, I'm like, man, if he just had a little bit more time, he would have been able to throw it over there. So I thought Tuck had a good game too. He didn't have a super high grade, but his touchdown, the run after the catch ability that Tucker Kraft has is just, it's outstanding, right? So lots of really good performances in this one. Just to kind of put a bow on it, there was a lot of improvement. They only punted one time in this game. Here's the crazy part, and this is partially why the score didn't feel as big as it should have been. They only had 3 possessions in the second half. 3. And they scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal. So, most of the time, if they had 1 or 2 more possessions, they easily could have gotten over 30 points. If they score 34 in this game, would you feel better about it? I think I would, right? So, again, let's say they get 10 more points, right? They get that field goal in the first drive where Jordan threw the pick, and then they just score 1 touchdown out of maybe 3 more possessions. 37-18, I think we'd feel a lot better about this, right? So I just want to end on one thing before we go to the defense. There were no offensive penalties in this game. So we talked about it going into the bye. We talked about it when we previewed this game. To not have any penalties on offense after the way they were penalized the first 4 games was really, really encouraging. There were a couple of, I think there was 1 penalty on, I don't even know if that, no, it wasn't. There were no penalties on offense. No pre-snap BS. It was just a really, really good improvement from a team that, again, had been penalized just dramatically the first few weeks. So, okay, going forward, let's talk about the defense. The defense is a very bittersweet story, which we will talk about as we go. The defense gave up only 268 yards in this game. Joe Flacco had 220 yards passing, but it took him 45 attempts to get there. So that means his yards per attempt were pretty bad. The Bengals running game was a non-factor in this one. They held the Bengals to only 55 yards for the whole game. I will say, this isn't in my notes, but I did watch the game again earlier. They did have sort of these sneaky, runs where, I think it was Chase Brown. He was stood up, and then he would chug his feet a little bit longer, and he would end up getting another 3 yards, right? They were getting in a lot better down and distances in the second half, right? There were a couple of drives where in the first half, it was 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 8 at best. They were in those 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3s a lot more in the second half. And part of that was they were getting some push in the run game. They were fighting really hard. But again, defensively, 3.5 yards a carry, less than that. 3rd down, they were only 6 out of 15. They did have this is the crazy part, they only had 1 conversion on 3rd down in the first half. All the other ones were in the second half. So again, in 4th down, they did give up 2 out of 2 on 4th down, and one of them was, I think the touchdown was on 4th down. So that was a little bit disappointing, but again, lots to hang your hat on here. Let's do the top 5 on defense of the Packers. The first one is a very pleasant surprise. Warren Brinson, the defensive tackle, 84.8 grade. So he had the best grade on defense here. He hasn't even been active in the first 4 games. Let me say that again. He hasn't even played yet. So if you guys remember, Warren Brinson was the 6th-round pick, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. They signed Nazir Stackhouse. Jeez, I can't talk. Nazir Stackhouse in UDFA. And, Brinson, I think, is a much better player, but they have been hesitant to play him. I'm not sure why. With Devontae Wyatt out, he obviously got some run today, and he played really, really well. So he played 21 snaps. He only played 2 snaps in rundowns, so he played 19 passing situations. He had 2 pressures, which is good, right? His pass rush win rate was 23.5. So for perspective, that would be Micah Parsons' second best game of the year if you go off of pass rush win rate. So very, very, very strong in this game. So again, he's been inactive this whole season. With Wyatt's injury, he was finally active, and he made the most of it. We're not going to see him inactive again, I'll tell you that for a fact. And they need to see more of him. There was a really, really nice spin move he had in the 4th quarter. The Packers had a hard time getting to Flacco in general in the second half, right? He got rid of the ball too quick, but Warren Brinson played a hell of a game in this one, and he deserved that 84.8. Number 2, Micah Parsons with another great game. He ended with 5 pressures, which led the team. He had a couple of really fun reps early, rushing from the inside. In the second half, the Bengals did neutralize him pretty well, and it was especially when LVN got hurt. There was a pretty remarkable drop in production when LVN went out. I'll say this too, and again, I don't want to be the guy who complains about the refs, but they held Micah Parsons like hell in this game. He was being held this entire game, and they didn't call a single one. Now, again, I don't care if they don't call it as long as they're making it even. LaFleur said that in his presser today. But there were some of them that were just egregious. He was getting choked out on one of the plays. He got tackled on another one. He got tripped. Like, you have to at least call some of those bad ones, right? And this was the same thing against Dallas, right? The officials just swallowed their whistles when it came to Micah Parsons rushing the passer. So that was disappointing, but you love to see another good game from Micah Parsons. Evan Williams was number 3 with a 76.4. He had a 76.5 coverage grade in this one. He tackled much better in this one. He had an 80 tackling grade. Edgerrin Cooper bounced back in this game, 73.6, 82 tackling grade, which again, nice bounce back from last week. And the 5th ranked player was Colby Wooden with a 73.2. His run defense was 79 grade. So again, he looked really good this game. He had a couple of really nice run stuffs. For honorable mention, let's talk about Javon Bullard really quick. He did end with a 71.8. He had a couple of really, really nice plays in this game. When some of the runs went outside, he was able to shut it down really, really quickly. His coverage it felt really bad. He got dusted a couple of times against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but at the end of the day, he still had a 68.9 coverage grade. So I thought he played well. He turns out, by the way, he did not have a concussion, even though he left to be evaluated for a concussion, which would have been his second of the year, which was scary. So I really liked what I saw from Bullard in this one. Rashawn Gary had 4 pressures. There were some really strong reps in there. He did kind of play hot and cold, though. There were some reps where he just got completely swallowed up. I will say when Micah was out, which there were several plays in the second half where he was out, they went over and they chipped Rashawn Gary with a tight end. And at that point, the other guys were just not getting any pressure whatsoever. So I do think the Bengals played a really good game in that aspect. They really did neutralize the pass rush pretty well in the second half. LVN, he ended up leaving the game with a foot injury, which we found out today. It's not super serious. There's still a chance he could play this week. I would sit him, but we'll see. He ended up with 3 pressures and the only sack in this game. So in the end, the Packers finished with 16 pressures, 5 quarterback hits. So it was a strong showing, but certainly their worst performance from a pass rushing standpoint of the season so far. Coming on in the game, pardon me, I thought they would put Joe Flacco in a blender, for lack of a better term. I thought they would send him to hell from a pressure standpoint. But the Bengals did a pretty good job of holding up in the second half. There were a lot of plays where he had a lot of time to throw. Early on, they were trying to – it's funny because they definitely changed their approach in the second half. Early on, they were trying to get shots down the field to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins too. There were a couple of throws that you could tell Flacco was looking deep and the Packers pass rush got there. In the second quarter, it felt like they really did change their game plan entirely. They started to go to that short passing game. They basically took the Dallas Cowboys playbook from last week and did the same thing. So I do think that if there's one scary thing to come away from this game, and LaFleur talked about this in his presser today, they have to figure out a way to stop that quick passing game because they're now 2 teams in a row have been able to play well doing it, and it's made the Packers defense look pretty human after looking crazy good for the first 3.5 games. So I do think that there's they got to look and figure out how to fix that. They got Arizona coming up this week. Arizona has a very average offensive line. I don't know if Kyler Murray is going to play, but they do not have the receivers that the Bengals do, and they do not have the quarterback that Dak was. So hopefully they can get a bounce back this week. Again, like I said, second half, they started to get the ball out quick. The first scoring drive in the second half was a true gut punch. It was a 17-play, 10-minute drive. I mentioned that earlier. That was really disappointing. Again, not every team has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Not every quarterback is experienced as Joe Flacco. In fact, only Aaron Rodgers is experienced as Joe Flacco. So is this sustainable? What happened to them playing quick game for 60 minutes? No. I will say I'm growing a little bit more concerned with the way the corners are playing. I thought Nixon was fine in this game. He was actually in position on a lot of those plays, but he just has bad ball skills, ultimately. Hobbs and Valentine looked pretty bad. It's my bold prediction of Nate Hobbs looking better than Jair this year is not aging well. So I don't know. There were, again, a lot of plays where it felt like the corners were playing way off. I don't know what Hafley's trying to do in that aspect. Again, I'm certainly not an expert in coverages. I'm certainly not an NFL coach, obviously. But it just seems really odd to me that they made it a little bit too easy for Joe Flacco. I think they can figure it out long term. This is still a top 5 defense, in my opinion. Statistically, it is too, by the way. But I'd be lying if I wasn't a little bit more concerned by the way they played in the second half the last 2 weeks. So I kind of feel like maybe Hafley said, yeah, Dak, it's just Dak. He played well. Nobody else will be able to do this. And then, having seen the Bengals replicate what Dak did to some degree, maybe that causes him to look and change a few things. So we'll see. I would chalk up partially some of this to Jamar Chase being insane. That touchdown catch he had in the fourth quarter was a crazy catch. He basically one-armed it. He had another crazy catch earlier against Nixon where essentially he caught it on Nixon's back. T. Higgins had a really nice third down catch too, where he kind of skied up over Carrington Valentine. The Bengals' weapons are just really, really good. And again, they get paid too. They did their best to get back in this game. And going into the next few games, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Carolina, nobody is as good as Jamar Chase that we're facing. We came into this game thinking, and I said this in the pregame, right? The only way the Bengals had a chance to win this game was if, Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins went off. And, they didn't wreck the game, but in the second half, they figured it out. So, again, lots of good to take away from the game still. 18 points with those two on the outside. Yeah, you wanted to see it be a little bit better, but I was happy with it overall. From a pressure standpoint, like I said, ultimately, Micah can't be the only guy getting pressure. And to this point, he's been the only guy who's been consistently getting pressure every single game. So again, I will say this, and I don't want to make too many excuses here, but you can draw a very clear line between when Devontae Wyatt got hurt in Dallas and when things started to turn on defense for the Packers. Again, he gets hurt late in the first quarter against Dallas, and really from that point on, the defense just hasn't looked the same. Devontae Wyatt was playing like a top 3 defensive tackle in the NFL. He was actually playing better than Jalen Carter was, who gets all the buzz, rightfully so, on the Eagles. I think they're going to get him back in the next 3 games, and that's going to make a really big difference. Rashawn Gary, again, he was on my honorable mentions. He had 4 pressures, very hot and cold. He hasn't been a consistent pass rushing threat yet, even though he has 4.5 sacks. Again, ton of time. I don't want to get too worried about it. From a rankings perspective, the Packers still have the 3rd-ranked defense in DVOA. Number one rushing defense in the NFL. They're 5th in overall yards allowed, 10th in points per game. Again, so I don't want to over-dramatize this, but, we came off those first 2 games saying this is a Super Bowl defense, and it hasn't looked like Super Bowl defense in the last 2 games. So we'll see. I think we'll see a much better full 4-quarter performance next week against Arizona. And then they played Pittsburgh against Aaron Rodgers, and boy, oh boy, is that going to be fun. So lastly, let's just touch on special teams quick. I just wanted to shout out special teams. For once, there was no catastrophic mistake on special teams. Going into the game, I talked about how when I found out McManus was going to be out, I cried, started to bleed from my ears. Just kidding. But Haversick stepped up. He made all of his kicks. Nothing was blocked, which is good. They finally had a lot of starters on the kicking units, which I liked. Kick coverage, there weren't any returns past the 30, which was fun. Kickoff return and punt return. Savion had a really nice couple returns on kick return. Bo Melton had a good one as well. They were really competent. A couple of holding penalties, but ticky-tack, I would say. They pulled Matthew Golden from punt return, which I hope is a permanent thing because I don't think he's a good punt returner. He waved for a fair catch with 20 yards in front of him in the first quarter, which led to him being benched, by the way, for Romeo Doubs. The only real mistake on special teams was on kickoff. They kicked, I think it was Haversick. It might have been him. Maybe they put Whelan in there. There were a couple kickoffs that went into the end zone, which brings the ball up to 35. So that's not good. But really, really nice stuff from the special teams after a couple of brutal games from the special teams. Let's put a bow on this game. So, again, coming out of this game, Packers are in first place in the NFC North. They have the second best record in the NFC, only to the Eagles. And they're currently the betting favorites to win the NFC. and they have the third best odds to actually win the Super Bowl. Let's go through a few more rankings. Per PFF, the Packers are the fourth overall team behind only the Rams, Seahawks, and Lions. They have the seventh ranked offense, the third ranked defense, the fifth ranked pass rush grade. Despite all the gripes, they're also second in coverage grade in the NFL, and they have a plus 29 point differential. So I say all of that to say they haven't even come close to their best football yet. Everything I just named to you guys, that is all with what I would say at best is 70% of their best. So again, you don't get awards for playing well in October, and I know this has been belabored all over the internet, but I need to say it on this podcast. Let's go back to 2011. The Packers finished 15-1. They looked incredible. They were blowing out teams by massive margins. They looked like the greatest offense in the history of Green Bay. Statistically, by the way, they're one of the top 10 offenses ever, by the way. What happened in 2011? They tailed off really, really bad. They were super hot until basically December. And they ran into a really, really good Giants defense in the divisional round, and they laid an egg. They lost. The Super Bowl season, 2010, the Packers on October 17th of that season fell to 3-3 after losing a game to the Miami Dolphins in overtime. I don't even think that Dolphins team made the playoffs that year. They're not a good team. But what happened? They showed flashes of greatness that whole season, whether it was when they blew out Dallas 45-7 or when they nearly beat the number one seeded Falcons, the defense shutting out the Jets, right? 2010, they didn't play their best football until right at the end of the season. So we've seen some incredible highs from this team on both sides of the ball, and we've seen, some lows, right? But we've seen what they can do, and we still haven't actually seen it all, right? We've seen about, at best, 80% of this team. Now they just have to do it. They got to bring it all together when it matters the most. So again, winning these games big or whatever matters way less than how they look later in the season, right? This isn't cope. I was just as mad as everyone else during the game. In fact, I was super pissed. And if they made it to the playoffs right now, based on what we've seen, would I say this is a Super Bowl team? No. But I do have they have a lot to improve, but they don't have to be good right now. So if you go back and watch the game, I promise you, I've done it 3 times now. It's much better than you think. Let's take a look at the NFC overall. Okay. NFC East, the Eagles. The Eagles don't look good right now. They just lost by 17 to the Giants. They were 14-point favorites in that game, just like the Packers were this weekend. And yeah, the Giants are better than the Bengals in my opinion. They lost by 17 points. It just shows you how tough it is to win in this league. Their running game with Saquon is a shell of what it was last season. I think their offense is totally disjointed. There's been 2 games this year, guys, already where the Eagles have been done next to nothing in the whole second half. On the defensive line, Zadarius Smith, by the way, just randomly retired today, which is so funny. It's like a parody. Zadarius Smith is a parody of himself. So they have Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. That's it. I'm sorry, I'm not remotely afraid of their pass rush like they were last year. Milton Williams and Josh Sweat are having great seasons on their new teams. Nolan Smith is a nice speed rusher. Jalen Carter, can he be a dominant pass rusher like a Aaron Donald? No, I don't. I love their secondary, but you can pick on them, right? Then you have the Commanders, right? They're playing better than they were early on, but they're still overrated. I think the Packers beat them handily. They've looked pretty mortal in some games. Then you go to the NFC South, brutal division. The Buccaneers look really good right now, particularly on offense, right? Emeka Egbuka, Baker Mayfield is the MVP so far, in my opinion. But at what point do we see the bad version of Baker Mayfield, right? Their defense is bad, very vulnerable at best, no pass rush. Their secondary is fine. They're not stopping anybody. They almost lost to the Jets, guys. They haven't won a game convincingly this whole season. Now, I think they're a good team, right? I actually think the Buccaneers are a really good team. But again, it just goes to show you we're through 2 divisions and nobody's scary, right? Let's go to the NFC West. The 49ers, they look good, but they just lost Fred Warner this week. And they already lost Nick Bosa. Even if they end up playing well in the regular season, they don't have those 2 guys in the playoffs. They can't compete, right? The Seahawks, now if you ask me who's the biggest threat to the Packers, who's the best team to beat the Packers, I actually think it might be the Seahawks. I think their defense is really, really good. Sam Darnold's had a really strong start. He's PFF's 3rd graded quarterback, by the way. But do I trust them as a Super Bowl contender when essentially JSN, by the way, is amazingly good? Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's their only true weapon on offense. Their offensive line is shaky. Then we get to the Rams. The Rams are the team that I've been hearing about all offseason, all through the season so far. The Rams are the best team in the NFC. Dan Orlovsky, who I love, he's an ESPN commentator. He has a you know what for Matt Stafford. I don't see it. Now, they could give Green Bay problems, right? But outside of their defensive line, what else is elite about this team on defense? Nothing. Their corners are bad. Their safeties are bad. Their linebackers are bad. They barely squeaked out a couple of victories. That offense is great. Don't get me wrong. Stafford's playing really well. Devontae Adams looks like he did 5 years ago. And yeah, Puka Nacua got hurt this week, but he's going to be back, I think. I think he's playing the best out of any receiver in the league right now, right? But do I think the Packers are better overall? I do. They have less losses than the Rams. The Packers have 1 loss. The Rams have 2. They almost lost a third this weekend. They really should have lost to the Colts, by the way. They had that crazy last play where, what's his name? Whatever. They had a bomb shot at the end of their game against the Colts to win the game. And then you have the Lions. The Lions have played very, very well since losing to the Packers. I'll give them that. Blowing out some of these teams that the Packers lost to. By the way, they lost to the Browns. They blew out the Browns. They blew out the Bengals, right? But then they play the Chiefs this week and look terrible, right? From a pass rushing standpoint, they have nobody on that defensive line who can rush the passer outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Their secondary is super beat up. And when it's healthy, I don't think it's that scary either, right? So again, I go through all these teams to say the NFC's wide ass open. Every team has been just as inconsistent as the Packers or more. So nobody is feeling phenomenal about their team right now, okay? So I'm not saying that to absolve the Packers of any blame. Absolutely not. But we as Packer fans are in a really good spot right now. We should feel good about where we're at. I know I do. Next week, the Cardinals, they play the Cardinals in Arizona. Another game the Packers should win. Kyler Murray was out this week, and I think he could be out this week. I actually probably think he plays, to be honest. But if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. Marvin Harrison Jr., he got concussed this week. He's probably going to play too. But again, if he plays, is he 100%? He's not going to be able to practice this week. Now, the Cardinals have a really good, underrated defensive line. I think Jordan could have some trouble against them. So they need to come in ready for a dogfight. We'll preview the game later this week. As of right now, the Packers are 5-point favorites. Definitely the better team, without question. But when Kyler Murray gets hot, he's as good as any quarterback in the NFL. And road games, they're always tricky, right? So we shouldn't be praying for a blowout in this game. We come away out of Arizona with a win, and we should be happy, right? So we'll preview that game later this week. In the meantime, let's all chill out and celebrate a win. I know it didn't feel as big as we wanted it to, but that Bengals win was really, really good. And guess what? They all count the same later, right? So, like I said, we'll be back later this week to preview the Cardinals. Like the video on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm trying to build up the YouTube channel a little bit. Download the podcast. It helps a ton. Send me your questions. I will be answering 2 of them on this week's episode, the preview episode. I appreciate all of you guys listening. This was a long episode. If you stuck all the way to the end, I appreciate it. Yeah, let's get ready for the Cardinals. Appreciate you guys listening. I'll see you later this week. Go Pack, go.